They say you can't buy dignity at a thrift store, but desperation makes you check the price tag anyway. I was 3 weeks behind on the motel room when I found the camera. Not in a store, in the mud along the Harrison River, half buried where the spring flood had left it, scratched and heavy and probably worthless. My daughter Maya was 7 steps ahead, poking driftwood with a stick, pretending the riverbank was an adventure instead of the place we'd been sleeping in my rusted Civic since Tuesday. The camera's leather strap was rotted through. Inside, behind a fogged viewfinder, I could just make out the edge of unexposed film. I should have left it there. We needed food, not artifacts. But something in the weight of it, solid, real, someone's once, made me slip it into my jacket. That night, under the Civic's dome light while Maya slept against the passenger door, I pried the back open with my thumbnail. The film canister popped out intact. 36 exposures, never developed. In the corner of the label, someone had written in fading ballpoint, July 1997, last summer. 28 years sealed in a metal tube. I held it up to the light like it might tell me why it mattered. Maya stirred, mumbled something about breakfast. I tucked the canister into the glove box next to our last $17 and the eviction notice from the motel. Then I did what any reasonable man clinging to the last shred of fatherhood would do. I decided those photos were going to save us. I just didn't know how yet. The universe rewards the desperate with strange doors. By morning, I'd convinced myself the camera was an omen. Not supernatural, nothing like that, but the kind of coincidence that forces your hand when you've run out of choices. Maybe the photos would show something valuable, or someone I could return them to for a reward, or at minimum a story I could sell to a local paper for grocery money. Maya asked why I kept staring at the film canister over our gas station breakfast. 2-day-old donuts, 1 black coffee split between us. I told her it was a treasure map. She rolled her eyes but smiled a little. 7 years old and already fluent in humoring her father's delusions. The downtown photo shop charged $12 for developing. I had 17. I handed over the canister and waited while the clerk, a kid with gauges and a name tag that said Micah, fed it into a machine that whirred and clicked like it was chewing bones. 40 minutes later, he slid an envelope across the counter. 36 glossy prints inside, and looked at me like he'd seen something he couldn't name. "These yours?" he asked. "Found them," I said. "Yeah." He tapped the envelope. "Thought so. Be careful with those." Outside, Maya tugged my sleeve, impatient. I opened the envelope on the hood of the Civic, and the first photo stopped my breath. It showed a house. Small white clapboard, deep porch, second-story gable, set back from a gravel drive under massive oaks. The shutters hung crooked. The lawn had gone to seed, but it stood, whole, alone, surrounded by nothing but field and tree line. Someone had written on the back, in the same handwriting from the canister, 174 Ashford Road, the last place we were happy. Chapter 1. The Find. I counted the money 3 times that morning before I understood the arithmetic of hopelessness. $17 minus 12, for developing minus 3 for gas equals $2, and the same broken Civic we'd been living in for 9 days. Maya asked if we could get pancakes. I said maybe tomorrow, which was the lie I'd been using since Thursday. The Harrison River runs brown this time of year, thick with spring melt and the debris of towns upstream. Plastic bottles, torn tarps, someone's lawn chair wedged against the pilings under the highway bridge. That's where we parked most nights, tucked behind the concrete abutment where the police cruisers couldn't see us from the road. Maya had stopped asking when we were going back to the apartment. She understood the eviction notice the way kids understand divorce or sickness, something adult and immovable that changed the rules without explanation. I found the camera during our morning walk to the gas station restroom. Maya liked to search for river treasure, her term for the junk the flood left behind, and I liked to pretend we were hiking instead of killing time before the convenience store opened and we could wash up in their single-stall bathroom. The camera was half sunk in silt, black and silver, heavier than it looked. A Pentax K1000, the kind my father used to shoot with before everything went digital. The lens was scratched to hell, but the body seemed intact, and when I popped the back there it was. A full roll of film, the canister still sealed, the label marked in blue ink that had faded but not disappeared. Maya asked what it was. I told her it was probably nothing. She asked if nothing was valuable. I said sometimes. We took it back to the car and I spent an hour cleaning the mud off with napkins from the glove box while she drew pictures on the fogged windows. The back of the camera had an engraving, worn almost smooth. To J, all my summers. L, someone's love story. Lost to a flood. Someone's last summer sealed in 36 frames. I tried not to think about what my own last summer would look like, photographed and buried in a river for someone else to find. That night, Maya fell asleep against the passenger door while I sat in the driver's seat, turning the film canister over in my hands. The math kept coming back to the same answer. Homeless father, 7-year-old daughter, $5 in my pocket after tomorrow's gas, no job, no family, no plan that didn't end with social services and a foster home, and the look in Maya's eyes when she realized I couldn't hold on. The film canister felt like a message in a bottle, like the universe asking me to believe in something other than arithmetic. I decided to develop it, not because I thought it would save us, but because I needed to know what someone else's last summer looked like. Maybe it would tell me something about how to face my own. By morning, I'd convinced myself the photos might show something, an address, a landmark, maybe even the face of whoever wrote that inscription. People paid rewards for lost family photos, didn't they? Or newspapers ran human interest stories, the kind with a photo of the finder and a quote about serendipity. I needed a story. I needed anything that wasn't the truth, which was that I'd lost my job at the distribution warehouse 3 months ago, burned through savings in 6 weeks, and then made every wrong choice a desperate man makes when he's trying to prove he can still take care of his daughter. The photo shop was sandwiched between a laundromat and a closed insurance office on 4th Street. I'd walked past it 100 times when we still had the apartment, never thinking I'd need it. The clerk was young, maybe 20, with stretched earlobes and a bored expression that changed when he pulled the film from the canister and held it up to the light. "You shoot this?" he asked. "Found it," I said. "By the river." He nodded slowly, like that explained something. "This is old stock. Probably been in there 20-30 years. Can you develop it?" "Yeah. Take about an hour." He quoted me $12. I had 17. I paid and took Maya to the library down the block, where we sat in the children's section, and she read to me from a book about a mouse who built a house from found objects. When my phone buzzed, the pay-as-you-go cell that I kept alive with $5 top-ups, I walked back to the shop. The clerk had the envelope waiting. He slid it across the counter but didn't let go when I reached for it. "These are something," he said. "You find who they belong to, you let me know." I took the envelope outside, Maya beside me, and opened it on the hood of the Civic. The first print hit me like cold water. A white clapboard house, small and solid, with a wraparound porch and second-story gable. The yard had gone wild, but the structure stood clean, framed by oak trees that looked a century old. Someone had written on the back in blue ballpoint, 174 Ashford Road, the last place we were happy. Maya leaned in. "Is that the treasure?" I flipped to the next photo. The same house, closer, showing the detail of hand-carved porch rails and a front door painted robin's egg blue. The third photo showed the interior, hardwood floors, a brick fireplace, morning light through tall windows. The fourth showed a garden plot, overgrown but still outlined in stone. I counted 17 photos of the house, each one dated July 1997, each one annotated on the back with small notes. Kitchen, new tile, 1996. Bedroom 2, Jay's room. Porch swing, needs fixing. The last photo showed 2 people, barely visible in the shadows of the porch, too far and too faded to identify. On the back, us, before everything changed. I stood there on 4th Street with my daughter pressed against my side and 36 photos of someone else's lost summer, and I thought, if I can find this house, if I can find these people, maybe they'll pay me for returning their memories. Or maybe the house is still standing abandoned, and maybe, the thought made my hands shake, maybe it's empty enough for 2 people who have nowhere else to go. Maya tugged my jacket. "Dad?" I looked down at her. "How do you feel about a road trip?" Chapter 2. The Decision. Ashford Road didn't exist on my phone's map. I tried 3 times, sitting in the Civic with Maya eating a dollar store granola bar, zooming in and out of every rural route within 50 miles of Harrison. Nothing. The library's public computer didn't help either. No Ashford Road in the county records, no property listings, no mentions in old news archives. It was as if the place had been erased. Or maybe it had never been officially named. Plenty of farm roads out here were just called the driveway or the back way by the families who'd lived on them for generations. I'd grown up in this kind of country before my parents died, and I drifted toward the city looking for work that paid better than seasonal labor. I knew how land could swallow names, how a house could stand for 100 years without ever appearing on a map that mattered to anyone except the people who lived there. The question wasn't whether I could find it. The question was whether I should. Maya asked where we were going. I told her we were detectives now, following clues. She liked that. She asked if detectives got pancakes. I said the best detectives always got pancakes eventually. I laid the photos out on a library table, arranging them by subject. Exterior shots, interior details, the garden, the two figures on the porch. The handwriting on the back was careful, almost formal, like someone documenting evidence. Kitchen, new tile, 1996. That suggested the house had been lived in recently, or at least maintained. Bedroom 2, Jay's room. A child, or maybe a younger sibling. The inscription on the camera, to Jay, all my summers unlined up. This was Jay's camera, given as a gift by someone marked L. A parent? A lover? A sibling who'd left? The final photo, the one showing two people in shadow, nagged at me. I held it up to the library's window light, trying to make out details. The taller figure had their arm around the shorter one. The posture was familiar, protective. A parent and child, maybe. Or two people saying goodbye. On the back, us. Before everything changed. July 1997. 28 years ago. If Jay had been a child then, they'd be in their 30s now. If they'd been young adults, they'd be approaching 50. The house in the photos looked well kept despite the overgrown yard, which meant it had been abandoned recently, or at least recently enough that the structure hadn't collapsed. That gave me a window. If I could find it, if it was still standing, if it was truly empty. I was thinking like a desperate man. I was thinking like someone who'd run out of choices and started measuring hope in square footage. Maya pulled on my sleeve. Are we going to live there? I looked at her. What makes you think that? Because you've been staring at those house pictures for an hour. She pointed at the photo of the porch. And because we need a house. 7 years old. 7 years of watching her father pretend everything was fine, then watching everything fall apart, then watching him try to pretend again. She'd earned the right to call me out. I don't know, I said. Maybe, if we can find it. What if someone lives there? Then we say hello and ask if they lost a camera. She considered this. What if they say no? Then we give them the pictures anyway, and maybe they'll give us pancakes. She smiled a little. You're really bad at lying, Dad. I packed the photos back into the envelope. The library closed in 20 minutes. We had nowhere to be except the Civic, and the Civic had nowhere to be except the highway bridge, where we'd sleep another night with the dome light off and the windows cracked, and Maya's jacket balled up as a pillow against the door. Or we could drive. We could spend our last $5 on gas and follow the only clue we had, which was the landscape in those photos. Oak trees, open fields, a gravel drive, maybe a state route in the distance. I'd grown up in country like that. I knew it was still out there 40 or 50 miles from the city, where the suburbs gave up and the farms started. If I could match the tree line, if I could find a white clapboard house with a robin's egg door, it was insane. It was the kind of plan a man makes when he's afraid to admit he's already lost. But Maya was looking at me with something that wasn't quite hope. Not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. And I needed her to believe I still knew what I was doing, even if I didn't, especially if I didn't. Okay, I said, we're going to find this house, and when we do, we're going to figure out what happened to the people who loved it, and maybe, we'll figure out what happens to us. She nodded, solemn. Detective work, I agreed. We left the library at closing time, drove to the gas station for a final restroom visit, then headed west on Route 47 with the photos spread across the dashboard and the sun dropping behind us. I didn't have a plan beyond driving until the landscape started to look familiar, then driving until it looked right. But the photos were specific. White oak trees with heavy limbs, a field that rolled toward treeline, a gravel drive that curved just so. Someone had loved this place enough to photograph it 17 times in one summer. Someone had wanted to remember every angle, every detail, every corner of the last place they'd been happy. I understood that impulse. I'd lost the apartment, the job, the savings, everything except Maya and the Civic and the clothes we'd stuffed into 2 garbage bags. But I hadn't lost the memory of what it felt like to have a door that locked from the inside, a bed that didn't recline, a morning that started with breakfast instead of the question of where we'd wash our faces. The people in those photos had lost their place. Maybe they'd spent 28 years trying to forget it, or maybe they'd spent 28 years trying to find their way back. Either way, I was going to return their memories. And if the house was still standing, if it was truly empty, if the universe owed me one stroke of mercy after 3 months of disaster, then maybe, just maybe, We'd found our last place too. Maya fell asleep 20 miles out, her head against the window, her breath fogging the glass. I drove west into the dusk, one hand on the wheel, one hand holding the photo of the white clapboard house with the robin's egg door. The camera's inscription echoed in my head. To Jay, all my summers. Whoever you are, I thought, wherever you are, I'm going to find your last summer, and maybe it'll show me how to start mine. Chapter 3. First Clues. I found Ashford Road at dawn, not on a map, but in the landscape itself. The oaks in the photo had a specific shape, heavy limbs spreading almost horizontal, the kind of growth that only happens in open field without competition. I'd been driving grid patterns through farm country for 2 hours, Maya asleep in the passenger seat, when I passed a grove that matched, 5 massive white oaks standing sentinel along a gravel drive that disappeared into morning mist. I nearly drove past. Then I saw the mailbox tilted and rusted with faded letters that might have once spelled something. I pulled onto the gravel, tires crunching, and killed the engine. The sudden silence woke Maya. She sat up disoriented, then saw the trees through the windshield. Is this it? I held the first photo up to the window. The angle was wrong, the light was wrong, but the trees were right. The spacing, the shape, the way they framed the drive. I think so. We got out. The morning was cold, the kind of October dawn that smells like turned earth and wood smoke from farms miles away. The gravel drive curved ahead, exactly as shown in the photos, disappearing around a bend. I walked slowly, Maya at my side, both of us silent like we were approaching something holy or haunted. Neither of us said what we were both thinking. What if it's not there? What if it's burned down? What if someone's living there and we're trespassing on their property at 6 in the morning, looking like exactly what we are, homeless and desperate? The house appeared around the bend like a photograph developing. White clapboard, exactly as shown, though the paint had weathered to gray in patches. The wraparound porch sagged on one side. The robin's egg door had faded to a ghost of blue, but it stood, whole, real, surrounded by the same field and tree line I'd memorized from 17 photos. Maya grabbed my hand. Dad, I know. It's real. Yeah. We approached the porch slowly. No car in the drive, no lights in the windows, no smoke from the chimney. The yard had gone completely wild. Waist-high grass, saplings sprouting near the foundation. The garden plot overrun with bramble. But the structure looked sound. The roof showed no obvious gaps. The windows were intact, though filmed with years of dust and pollen. I knocked on the front door, more out of courtesy than expectation. The sound echoed inside. No answer. I tried the handle. Locked. I walked the perimeter, Maya trailing behind, checking windows and the back door. Everything locked. Everything silent. In the back, I found a cellar entrance, wooden doors set at an angle into the ground, secured with a rusted padlock that looked original to the house. Is it abandoned? Maya asked. Looks like it. Can we go inside? Not legally. She looked at me with those 7-year-old eyes that had watched me lose everything and knew exactly how many moral boundaries desperation could cross. But we're going to, right? I should have said no. I should have driven back to town, found the county assessor's office, researched the property records, done everything the legal and proper way. But I was 3 weeks homeless. I had $2 in my pocket, and this house looked like it had been empty for a decade. If there was ever a time to beg forgiveness instead of asking permission, it was when your daughter hadn't slept in a real bed for 9 days, and the only alternative was the front seat of a rusted Civic under a highway bridge. We're going to knock again, I said. Louder, and if nobody answers, we're going to make absolutely sure nobody's home. And then we're going to be very careful about a broken window in the back. She nodded, solemn, like I'd just outlined a military operation instead of breaking and entering. I knocked 3 more times, loud enough to wake anyone inside. Silence. Then I walked around to the back, found a window that looked into what the photos labeled as Bedroom 2, Jay's room, and used my elbow wrapped in my jacket to crack the corner pane. The glass broke clean. I reached through, found the latch, and lifted the sash. Stay here, I told Maya. No way. Maya, I'm not staying outside by myself. Her voice had that edge I'd heard too often lately, the one that said she'd already lost enough and wasn't going to lose sight of me too. I helped her through the window first, then climbed through myself, both of us landing in a bedroom thick with dust and the smell of old paper. The light through the windows was dim, filtered through years of grime, but enough to see by. The room was small, with a single bed frame against one wall, A dresser with drawers hanging open and a closet door ajar. No furniture remained except the built-ins, but on the wall above where the bed had been, someone had carved into the wood, J.P. Summer 1997. Maya traced the letters with her finger. Who's J.P.? The person who took the photos, I think. I pulled out the envelope, found the shot labeled Bedroom 2, Jay's room, and held it up. Same window placement, same closet, same carved initials. We were standing in Jay's childhood bedroom. The house had that particular silence of long abandonment, not the quiet of night, but the heavy stillness of a place where no one has spoken for years. Our footsteps on the hardwood floor echoed through empty rooms. I moved slowly through the house, Maya at my side, both of us cataloging what remained. Kitchen with original cabinets, bathroom with clawfoot tub, living room with brick fireplace exactly as photographed. No furniture, no belongings, no sign anyone had lived here recently, but also no sign of vandalism or squatters. Just dust, cobwebs, and the smell of a house slowly returning to the earth. In the kitchen I found the first real clue. A stack of mail on the counter, yellowed and mouse-chewed. I flipped through carefully. Electric bills from 2009. A bank statement from 2010. All addressed to J. Patterson, 174 Ashford Road. The last piece was a handwritten letter, the envelope addressed in shaky script to J. Patterson with no return address. I opened it carefully. Jamie, I know you said never to write, but I wanted you to know the house is paid for. Taxes current through 2010. The key is where we left it. If you ever want to come home, it's yours. I'm sorry for everything. L. My hands shook holding it. The date on the postmark, March 2010, 15 years ago. And if the taxes had been current then, that meant someone, this L from the camera inscription, had kept paying them, at least for a while. I needed to check county records, find out if the property was in foreclosure or just abandoned, whether J. Patterson was alive or dead or simply gone. But standing in that kitchen with Maya looking up at me, with dust motes floating in morning light through the same windows I'd seen in photographs taken 28 years ago, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, the possibility that we weren't just trespassing, that maybe somehow this place had been waiting for someone to need it as badly as we did. Dad? Maya's voice was small. Can we stay here? I looked around the kitchen, old but solid, cabinets that could be cleaned, a stove that might work if the gas was still connected, a roof overhead that wasn't a car ceiling. I don't know yet, but we can stay today. Rest, clean up, and I'll figure out what happens next. She nodded, then walked to the window and pressed her hand against the glass, leaving a print in the dust. Someone loved this place. Yeah, I said. They did. If you're enjoying this journey so far, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Chapter 4. Rebuild Montage. The water still ran. That was the first miracle. I turned the kitchen tap, and after 30 seconds of coughing pipes, brown water gave way to clear. The electricity was dead, but the plumbing held. That meant the house had bones, meant someone had maintained it well enough that 15 years of abandonment hadn't killed the essentials. Maya and I spent that first day like archaeologists, documenting what worked and what didn't. The roof was sound. I climbed up using an extension ladder I found in the cellar and walked every square foot, checking for soft spots. Found none. The windows all latched. The doors hung straight. The hardwood floors were scratched and dusty but solid underneath. Someone had built this house to last, and someone had loved it enough to keep it that way. By afternoon, I'd made a list. Clean water, intact structure, working fireplace. Against that, no electricity, no gas. Autumn coming hard with winter behind it, and the small matter of us having no legal right to be here. But I'd learned in 3 months of homelessness that survival math is different from legal math. We needed shelter. This house needed people. The gap between those facts and the law felt negotiable in a way it probably shouldn't have. I found a broom in the cellar, its handle cracked but usable. Maya and I started in the bedroom she'd already claimed, Jay's old room, sweeping years of dust out the window we'd broken to enter. She worked without complaining, her small hands gripping the dustpan while I swept, both of us falling into a rhythm that felt almost domestic. When the floor was clean enough to see the wood grain, she sat cross-legged in the center and smiled. "It's nice," she said. "It's empty. That means we can make it whatever we want." 7 years old and already a better philosopher than her father. We found blankets in the Civic, the 2 we'd been sleeping under for the past week, and spread them on the bedroom floor. Not a bed, but cleaner and warmer than the car. I collected firewood from fallen branches in the yard and got the living room fireplace going as the sun set. The first flames felt like a statement. We live here now, at least for tonight, at least until someone tells us we can't. Maya fell asleep curled by the fire while I sat on the hearth and went through the rest of the mail I'd found. Most was mundane: utility bills, grocery store circulars, a newsletter from a church in town. But tucked in the stack, I found a property tax statement from 2010, and my heart stopped. The house was paid off, fully owned by J. Patterson, with the next tax payment due October 2010, 15 years ago, which meant either the taxes had gone unpaid since then, or someone had been paying them anonymously, or the county had seized the property for back taxes and just never bothered to auction it because it was too remote and too cheap to matter. I needed to know which. Tomorrow I'd drive to the county courthouse, check the records, find out who legally owned this place and whether we were squatting in someone's legitimate property or occupying something the state had already forgotten. But tonight, we had heat and walls and a floor that didn't rock when we moved. That was enough. I woke before dawn to the sound of rain on the roof. The fire had burned down to coals. Maya slept through it, her breathing deep and even in a way I hadn't heard since we'd lost the apartment. I fed the fire and listened to the house wake up around us. Timbers creaking, pipes ticking, the particular groan of old wood settling under new weight. The house was talking, and it sounded like it was saying, "Welcome home." By morning, the rain had turned serious, the kind of October storm that strips leaves and tests foundations. I checked every room for leaks, found 2 small ones in the upstairs hallway, and put buckets underneath. Water dripped steady but manageable. The roof would need patching before winter, but it would hold through this storm. That felt like a promise. Maya woke and asked about breakfast. I had 1 granola bar left and 30 cents in my pocket. Not enough for a meal, barely enough for hope. But the rain had filled an old barrel by the back porch, and I realized we could use that for washing up if I boiled it first. I found a dented pot in the cellar, heated water over the fire, and we took turns washing our faces and hands with a rag I'd found. It wasn't a shower, but it was clean. It was dignified. It was more than we'd had in weeks. The rain gave us an excuse to stay inside to keep working. I found a mop handle in the cellar and rigged it with an old t-shirt to wash the kitchen floor. Maya discovered a closet full of mason jars and spent an hour washing them out, lining them up on the counter like we were preparing for a harvest that would never come. By afternoon, the kitchen looked almost livable, and I'd found more clues about the house's history. A newspaper clipping from 1995 about a local woman named Laura Patterson, who'd won a blue ribbon for her garden at the county fair. A photo stuck to the fridge with a magnet, faded but clear. A woman in her 50s standing in front of this house, one arm around a teenage kid who must have been Jamie, mother and child. The same 2 figures from the porch photo. I showed Maya. "This is them, the people who lived here. Where did they go? I don't know yet. Are we stealing their house?" The question hit harder than she knew. "I'm going to find out tomorrow. If this house belongs to someone who wants it back, we'll leave. But if it's been abandoned, if nobody's been paying the taxes, if the county has it listed as derelict, then maybe we can figure out a way to make it right." She nodded, trusting me more than I deserved. "Okay, but I like it here." "Me too." That night we slept in Jay's old room with the fire crackling down the hall and rain drumming on the roof. For the first time in weeks, Maya didn't wake up crying, and for the first time in months, I felt like maybe I hadn't completely failed her. The house held us through the storm, and in the morning, I'd start trying to earn the right to stay. Chapter 5. Partial Discovery. The county courthouse was 40 minutes away, a brick building in town that smelled like floor wax and old paper. I left Maya at the public library with instructions to read and stay visible, then spent 2 hours navigating the assessor's office until a clerk finally pulled the property records for 174 Ashford Road. The news was mixed. The house was still registered to J. Patterson, full name Jamie Lee Patterson. The last tax payment had been made in 2015, 5 years after that letter from Elle. After that, nothing. The county had sent notices, placed a lien, started foreclosure proceedings. But the property was so remote and the tax debt so small, less than $8,000 accumulated over 10 years, that it had never been auctioned. It sat in limbo, technically owned by Jamie Patterson but effectively abandoned to the state. "So what happens now?" I asked the clerk. She shrugged. "Depends. If Patterson's alive and wants to pay the back taxes, the lien gets cleared and they keep the house. If Patterson's dead or unreachable, the county will eventually auction it to recover the debt. Could take years, though. We've got a backlog. What if someone wanted to buy it now? You'd have to track down Patterson, get them to either pay the taxes or sign over the deed. Or wait for the county auction whenever that happens. She looked at me over her glasses. You interested? I thought about the $2 in my pocket, the daughter in the library, the house that had kept us warm through last night's storm. Maybe, if I can find Patterson. Back in the car, I started searching. Jamie Patterson was a common enough name that my phone's browser returned hundreds of hits, none obviously connected to a small farm in rural county. I tried Facebook, LinkedIn, obituary searches. Nothing definitive. But in the property records, I'd noticed something. The deed had been transferred to Jamie Patterson from Laura Patterson in 1998, 1 year after the photos. And in the death records, I found her. Laura Jean Patterson, died March 2009, age 72, buried at Riverside Cemetery. So Elle was Laura, the mother. She'd given the house to Jamie in 1998, then died in 2009. The letter I'd found was postmarked 2010, which meant someone else had written it after her death. Maybe an executor, maybe a family member trying to reach Jamie, but Jamie had never responded, never came back, never paid the taxes that would have kept the house. That felt like abandonment. That felt like someone running from ghosts. I picked Maya up from the library and drove back to the house in afternoon light. We had maybe 3 hours before dark. I wanted to search more carefully now that I knew the story was about a mother and child, about someone named Laura, who'd kept a garden, and someone named Jamie who'd been given the house but couldn't bear to return. In the cellar, I found what I'd missed before. Boxes, dozens of them stacked against the back wall covered in dust and mouse droppings. I dragged them out one by one while Maya watched from the stairs. The first box held photo albums, Laura's life and pictures from the 1960s forward. Marriage, divorce, raising Jamie alone, the farm growing, the garden flourishing. The last album ended in 1997, the year of the camera, the year of the last summer. The second box held Jamie's childhood, school papers, art projects, a baseball glove, a teddy bear with one eye. The third box held documents, birth certificate, immunization records, high school transcripts, a college acceptance letter. Jamie had been accepted to Oregon State in 1998 with a scholarship. The next document was a death certificate, and my blood went cold. Not Jamie. A different name. David Lee Patterson, age 19, died July 15, 1997. I sat on the cellar floor holding the certificate while Maya came down the stairs. Who's that? Jamie's brother, I think. I pulled out my phone, searched the obituary archives. Found it. David Lee Patterson, 19, died in a car accident on Route 47, survived by his mother Laura and his younger sibling Jamie. Services at Riverside Church, the last summer. The camera given to Jamie by Elle. Laura, the mother, trying to preserve something before it all fell apart. The photos of the house, 17 different angles, like Jamie was trying to memorize every corner before leaving for college. And then David died, and everything changed. I found more in the boxes. Letters from Laura to Jamie at college returned unopened. Christmas cards returned unopened. A deed transfer document, signed but never acknowledged. And finally, tucked in the bottom of the last box, a journal. Laura's handwriting. The same careful script from the letter upstairs. Jamie won't speak to me, won't come home, blames me for David driving that night, blames me for letting him borrow the car, blames me for being the one who survived. I don't know how to fix this. I'm leaving the house to Jamie in the will. Maybe someday it'll mean something. Maybe someday forgiveness will look like coming home. The last entry was dated February 2009, a month before she died. I closed the journal and sat in the dim cellar with Maya beside me. And I understood what this house was, a monument to family broken by grief, to a mother who died hoping her child would return, to a child who'd run from the place where everything had been lost. Jamie Lee Patterson had never come back because coming back meant facing the summer when David died, meant accepting the forgiveness Laura had offered, meant admitting that home was the place that hurt most. Dad? Maya's voice was quiet. Are we still going to stay here? I looked at her. This house belongs to someone who's grieving. Someone who lost their brother and their mother, and couldn't bear to come back. We can't just take it. But we need it. I know. And they don't want it. Maybe. Or maybe they do. And they just haven't found the courage yet. She thought about that. So what do we do? I stood, brushing dust from my jeans. We try to find Jamie. We return the camera and the photos, and we ask permission to stay, or we help them sell. Or we figure out some way to make this right that doesn't involve stealing from someone who's already lost everything. Maya nodded, solemn. That's the detective way? That's the human way. We climbed out of the cellar into evening light. The house stood around us solid and patient, still holding the shape of the family that had built it. I thought about Laura's journal, about grief that outlives us, about the distance between forgiveness offered and forgiveness accepted. If I could find Jamie, if I could give them back these photos and this house and the choice to come home or let go, maybe that was worth more than squatting rights. Maybe that was the only way to deserve shelter. But first, I had to make it through another night without heat or food, had to figure out how to feed my daughter on no money, had to solve the immediate crisis before I could solve the moral one. The universe wasn't offering me easy choices, just hard ones with human faces. Chapter 6. Escalation. The storm hit on our third night. Not the steady rain from before, but wind that screamed through gaps in the siding and rain that found every weakness in the roof. I woke to water dripping on my face, 3 buckets already overflowing in the upstairs hallway. Maya was awake too, eyes wide in the dark. Is it going to fall down? No. I hoped I wasn't lying. But we need to check the roof. I pulled on my jacket and went outside into chaos. Tree branches down in the yard, the old barn's door banging loose, and up on the roof, visible by the beam of my phone's flashlight, a tarp I'd laid over the worst leak was flapping free, about to tear away entirely. If it went, the rain would pour straight into the upstairs bedroom, soaking the ceiling, rotting the joists. In a week, the damage would be severe. In a month, it would be structural. I found the ladder still leaning against the house from my earlier inspection. Climbing it in the storm was insane, the kind of desperation move that gets men killed and daughters orphaned. But I thought about Maya inside, about the house Laura had built and Jamie had abandoned, about the fragile claim we had to safety if we let the roof cave in. I climbed. The wind at the top nearly threw me off. I hooked one arm around the chimney and crawled to where the tarp was tearing loose. My fingers were numb, the shingles slick with rain. I grabbed the tarp's corner and tried to secure it with the rocks I'd used before, but the wind kept ripping it away. I needed something heavier, something that would hold through the night. Movement below. Maya standing at the ladder's base, looking up. "Get inside," I shouted. "You need help. Maya." But she was already climbing, slow and careful, and I couldn't come down to stop her without leaving the tarp. She reached the roof edge and I grabbed her hand, pulled her away from the edge. "What are you doing? You can't do it alone." She was crying, or maybe it was just rain on her face. "You can't do everything alone." She was right. I couldn't. The tarp needed 2 people. One to hold it flat, one to secure the edges. We worked together in the wind and rain, her small hands pressing down while I wedged stones in a length of rope I'd pulled from my pocket. It took 10 minutes that felt like an hour, but we got it secured. Not perfect, but enough to last the night. We climbed down together, soaked and shaking. Inside, I built the fire back up and we sat in front of it, wrapped in every blanket we had. Maya's teeth were chattering. I held her close, feeling like the worst father in history, the kind who lets his 7-year-old climb a roof in a storm because he's too proud or too desperate to admit he can't do it alone. "I'm sorry," I said. "It's okay." "It's not. You could have fallen." "But I didn't, and the house is okay." She pulled back to look at me. "That's what matters, right? That we take care of it?" I didn't know how to explain that taking care of the house maybe wasn't our job, that we were trespassers at best and thieves at worst, that every day we stayed made it harder to leave. But her eyes were so certain, so sure that we were doing the right thing, and I couldn't find the words to tell her we might be wrong. The next morning I drove to town with the last of our money, a $5 bill I'd found in the car's cup holder, and bought a loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter. 2 meals, maybe 3 if we stretched. Back at the house I found a man standing in the driveway. He was older, maybe 60, wearing work clothes and a skeptical expression. He looked from me to the house and back. "You the one fixing the roof?" My heart pounded. "Who's asking?" "Ed Fletcher. I farm the next property over." He gestured vaguely east. "Saw lights here the past few nights. Thought maybe the Patterson kid finally came back." I made a decision. "I'm trying to find them. Jamie Patterson, you know where they are?" He shook his head. "Haven't seen Jamie since the funeral. Laura's funeral, I mean. They showed up, stood in the back, left before the burial. That was 16 years ago. You knew the family?" "Sure. Laura was good people. Kept this place running solo after her husband left. Raised 2 kids out here. Did seasonal work at my farm when money was tight. David was a good kid. Jamie too, though quieter. Took it hard when David died. Left for college and never came back, far as I know. The house has been empty all this time. Laura lived here alone till she died. After that, nothing. County's been trying to foreclose, but nobody wants it. Too far out. Too run down." He looked at me carefully. You related? No. I found a camera with photos of the house. I'm trying to return it to Jamie. Uh-huh. He didn't believe me, but he didn't call me a liar either. Well, if you're fixing the roof, you're doing more than the county ever did. Place deserves better than rotting away. He pulled a business card from his pocket. You need work, I could use help on the farm. Seasonal harvest coming up. Cash under the table, no questions. I took the card. Thank you. And if you find Jamie, tell them Ed Fletcher says the house remembers them. Tell them Laura never stopped hoping. He left and I stood in the driveway holding the card and feeling the weight of too many obligations. To Maya, to Jamie, to Laura's ghost, to the house that had sheltered us when we had nowhere else to go. The storm had damaged more than the roof. It had damaged my certainty that what we were doing was survivable, let alone right. Inside, Maya was spreading peanut butter on bread, carefully rationing each slice. She looked up when I entered. Who was that? A neighbor. He offered me work. That's good, right? Yeah, it's good. I sat beside her, took the slice she offered. Maya, we need to talk about what happens if I find Jamie. You mean when? When I find Jamie. They might want the house back, they might want us to leave. She chewed slowly, thinking, would that be fair? It would be theirs. But we fixed it. We're taking care of it. It's still theirs. She set down her bread. Then we'll fix it really good before we go. So when they come back, it's ready. 7 years old and already understanding what I'd been avoiding. That sometimes the right thing isn't the thing that saves you. Sometimes it's just the thing that makes you worthy of the mercy you're hoping for. If this restoration story has you hooked, hit like. It helps us bring more lost places back to life.